Today you'll learn how to train your mind to function like a cold, lethal analytical machine, not to be cruel, but to drastically reduce bad decisions when pressure mounts. By the end of this video, you'll possess mental clarity to read people, anticipate betrayals, and make superior decisions in any situation. Why do intelligent people make bad decisions when they're nervous? You've seen this happen. Brilliant professionals who freeze in important meetings, articulate people who say nonsense when confronted, rational individuals who explode over trivial things. What happens to the brain in these moments? Niccolo Machiavelli faced this in the worst possible way. In 1512, when the Medici retook Florence, he lost everything. Career destroyed, reputation tarnished, suspected of conspiracy. For weeks, he lived knowing he could be executed at any moment. It was exactly the type of situation where many people would panic completely. But he developed something different. Instead of despair, he began documenting his own emotional reactions with the precision of an anatomist. As Machiavelli wrote in his letters to Francesco Vettori, he observed how fear distorted his perception of political reality, how anger made him focus on the wrong details in negotiations, how hope blinded him to obvious danger signs in Florentine alliances. Imagine yourself in that situation, your life hanging by a thread, your mind bombarded by destructive emotions. Many would let panic take over, make desperate choices. Machiavelli did the opposite. He developed a method to completely separate facts from feelings, a technique he later applied in The Prince when analyzing ruler behavior. When finally arrested and tortured in 1513, his subsequent letters reveal how he applied this emotional separation technique. While his body suffered, his mind remained in a zone of cold analysis, calculating every word, analyzing every question, processing information without letting physical pain interfere with reasoning. This cold analysis capacity saved him from execution and gave him material for his later works. The secret he documented in his writings was revolutionary. Every time he faced an important decision, he applied what we can now call analytical separation. First, he identified exactly what emotion he was feeling. Second, he listed only the verifiable facts of the situation. Third, he asked what he would do if he were a neutral observer analyzing someone else's problem. This sequence broke emotional hijacking and restored mental clarity. Knowing how to analyze coldly is just the first step. Now comes something Machiavelli considered even more crucial for political survival: observation. This single word summarizes the obsession that transformed Machiavelli from naive diplomat to lethal analyst. During his diplomatic missions across Europe, between 1500 and 1512, he developed a systematic method for deciphering human behavior that worked in any culture, with any person. Have you ever left a conversation with that strange feeling? Like something didn't add up, but you couldn't explain what? Machiavelli was like that at the beginning too. In his first missions to France, he was almost naive. He believed what leaders said, focused only on words, ignoring what their bodies actually communicated. In 1502, when he met Cesare Borgia, he almost fell into a devastating political trap because he didn't know how to read the signs that he was being deceived. But this experience taught him something fundamental about human nature that he documented extensively in his diplomatic reports. Machiavelli began studying people like an anatomist studies corpses, obsessively, systematically. During his years traveling European courts, he developed a method for deciphering behavioral patterns that revealed true intentions behind diplomatic words. The transformation was brutal. The naive Machiavelli who trusted political promises died. A human analyst was born who could predict betrayals weeks before they happened. In his letters to Florence, he described with surgical precision not just what leaders said, but what they really intended to do based on observable behavioral patterns. How did he do this? By observing 5 universal signs that reveal anyone's true intentions. First, synchrony between gestures and words. When someone lies or omits information, there's always a microscopic lag between what they say and how their body moves. Second, sudden changes in breathing rhythm during specific topics. Third, where eyes involuntarily go when the person thinks they're being watched. Fourth, how hands behave when the person isn't paying conscious attention to them. Fifth, voice tone alterations on specific keywords. These signs work because they're involuntary neurological reactions. A person can control words, but can't completely control nervous system reactions. Machiavelli discovered that these small incongruences reveal more about character and intentions than hours of diplomatic conversation. Reading people is fundamental, but there's something he considered even more devastating for discovering truth behind lies. Silence, this weapon that Machiavelli mastered in European courts, can force people to reveal information they never intended to share. But many of us do exactly the opposite of what we should when we want to discover the truth. Think about a typical situation. You suspect someone is lying to you. What's your natural reaction? Probably asking direct, invasive questions, confronting, pressuring for answers, demanding detailed explanations. This approach is frequently a complete disaster. Machiavelli learned this the most embarrassing way possible. In his first diplomatic missions to France and Germany, he arrived at courts asking obvious, direct questions about military intentions and political alliances. The result? Empty answers, half-truths, and completely useless information for Florence. But during a crucial meeting with King Louis XIV, something changed his approach forever. He realized that the most valuable information didn't come from answers to his questions, but from the questions the king himself asked. That's where the true concerns, fears, and hidden plans of the French crown were revealed. This discovery revolutionized his diplomatic method. Instead of bombarding people with interrogations, he developed a completely different system. He started with apparently casual observations about neutral situations, made comments that seemed irrelevant but were carefully planned to provoke specific reactions, left strategic silent spaces that forced the other person to fill with revealing information. Most powerful was his technique of asking questions that didn't seem like questions. Instead of directly inquiring about military plans, he commented on regional weather and observed how this would affect troop movements. Instead of questioning political loyalties, he spoke casually about leader personalities and listened carefully to how they were described. Instead of asking about financial resources, he discussed casually about the cost of maintaining armies. This approach worked because it bypassed people's natural psychological defenses. When they don't feel interrogated, they relax and end up revealing much more than intended. 3 specific types of questions that Machiavelli developed reveal character, competence, and reliability without the person realizing they're being analyzed. Asking is only half the battle. What comes next separates brilliant strategists from people who always live reacting to events. Consequences. This word obsessed Machiavelli during his political analyses. While other diplomats focused only on the immediate present, he developed an amazing capacity to map future unfoldings that allowed him to anticipate political moves weeks in advance. Many people around you live reacting to events. Something unexpected happens, they despair trying to find a solution. A problem arises, they run after improvised solutions. An opportunity appears, they hesitate so much they lose it. Living always reacting is living always at a disadvantage. During his political observations documented in his discourses on the first 10 books of Titus Livy, Machiavelli noticed a fascinating pattern in military leaders of the time. He observed how successful commanders had specific methods for consolidating conquered territories. First, they brutally eliminated any local resistance. Second, they appointed severe governors to consolidate administrative control. Third, after some months, they publicly executed these same governors, assuming the role of benevolent liberator. It was a calculated sequence to manipulate popular perception. But Machiavelli's analysis went beyond this obvious tactic. He saw the long-term consequences of this strategy. If commanders continued using this pattern, they would eventually face coalitions of enemies who would anticipate their moves. If they always depended on cruelty followed by theatrical clemency, they would lose credibility when they needed genuine allies. If they maintained obsession with total control, they couldn't delegate power and would end up overwhelmed. His predictions were confirmed with astonishing precision in multiple historical cases. Commanders really faced enemy coalitions, really lost crucial allies at decisive moments, really collapsed when they tried to control too many territories simultaneously. Everything exactly as Machiavelli had anticipated in his diplomatic letters. How did he do this? Through what we can call consequence mapping. For important decisions, he analyzed 3 possible scenarios. What would happen if everything went right? What would happen if everything went wrong? And what would happen in the most likely scenario? But the differential was in the next step. For each scenario, he mapped second and third order consequences. Many stop at the first consequence. Machiavelli went to the third. If someone makes a decision that generates result X, this will provoke reaction Y in other people, which in turn will generate behavior Z. This chain of consequences revealed predictable patterns of human behavior that allowed anticipating moves weeks in advance. Anticipating is powerful, but there's a skill that Machiavelli considered the most fundamental of all for accelerating strategic thinking: connections. During his years in exile in Sant'Andrea, between 1513 and 1527, Machiavelli faced a unique mental challenge that forced his mind to develop extraordinary analytical capabilities. He received fragmented information from dozens of informants scattered across Italy. Encrypted letters arrived irregularly, contradictory reports about the same events, rumors mixed with verifiable facts, deliberately planted gossip to confuse analysts like him. It was like trying to assemble a giant puzzle where many pieces were false or distorted. Your brain makes thousands of connections per day between apparently unconnected information. It's an automatic and unconscious process. The problem is that these connections are frequently chaotic, imprecise, and often completely wrong. You see patterns where they don't exist, draw hasty conclusions, make associations based on emotions, not logic. At the beginning of his exile, Machiavelli made the same mistakes anyone would make. Connected information by superficial similarity, believed in patterns that confirmed his expectations about Italian politics, ignored data that contradicted his preconceived theories. The result was completely wrong analyses about European great power movements, but gradually, he developed a systematic method to train his brain to make more precise and useful connections. He began obsessively questioning his first impressions about political events, forced himself to find at least 3 alternative explanations for any pattern he identified, tested his conclusions by trying to find contradictory evidence. Most important was his daily cross-analysis ritual. Every late afternoon, he took all information received that day and practiced a specific exercise. First, he listed pure facts, separating them from interpretations and opinions. Second, he identified which information connected logically and which seemed connected only by temporal coincidence. Third, he asked what other explanations could justify the same evidence. This systematic training transformed his analytical capacity. He began identifying political patterns weeks before events happened, saw connections between apparently isolated events that revealed hidden strategies of great powers, could predict alliances and betrayals by analyzing subtle changes in different political actors' behavior. Your mind now connects information more precisely, but you still need to master the art of transforming complex problems into simple, executable solutions. Decomposition. This principle that Machiavelli systematically applied as second Chancellor of Florence can transform any apparently impossible problem into a series of manageable tasks. Most problems, however complex they seem, can be decomposed and solved using a simple method that many completely ignore. You probably do what everyone does when facing a difficult problem. Keep ruminating, think in circles, focus on the most dramatic and emotional aspects of the situation, look for culprits, imagine catastrophic scenarios, seek magical solutions that solve everything at once. When Machiavelli assumed the position of second Chancellor of Florence in 1498, the Republic was in total crisis. Wars on multiple fronts against rival city-states, unstable alliances with France and Spain, financial resources exhausted by poorly planned military campaigns, internal factions fighting for power, external threats from French, Spanish, and the Pope. It was the type of situation that paralyzes entire governments. His humanist colleagues approached these problems like academic philosophers, discussed classical theories about ideal government, quoted Cicero and Plato on republican virtues, debated moral principles about just war based on Aristotle, sought solutions based on how things should work in a perfect world. Meanwhile, Florence continued losing territories and influence. Machiavelli adopted a radically different strategy, completely ignored how problems should be solved theoretically, focused exclusively on how they actually worked in practice. Instead of debating abstract principles, he analyzed concrete cases of how other city-states had dealt with similar crises, studied what had worked, what had failed, and why. He developed a systematic method that he applied to complex problems. First, he identified the real core of the problem by removing all emotional and dramatic layers. Many apparently complex problems have a simple central cause masked by secondary symptoms. Second, he mapped all involved actors and their specific interests, not their public statements. Third, he listed only solutions that could be implemented with actually available resources, not ideal resources. This three-step method that Machiavelli documented in The Art of War can be applied to personal, professional, or financial problems. It works because it cuts through emotional fog and focuses only on what can be controlled and modified. Solving problems is essential, but there's something few master that can drastically accelerate your ability to process important information: ritual. This word defines how Machiavelli transformed his memory capacity into a powerful political tool during an era where his career literally depended on the quality of his recollection. Our digital era is literally harming our memory capacity. You outsource everything to your phone. Phone numbers, appointments, important ideas, even the route to places you've been dozens of times. Your brain is getting used to not retaining information because it knows it can always consult some device. Machiavelli lived in an era where his career literally depended on the quality of his memory. There were no recorders, computers, or even enough paper to write everything down. During his diplomatic missions, he needed to memorize entire conversations with kings and popes to later report them accurately to the Florentine government. A memory error could cost thousands of lives or the city's independence. He developed two specific techniques that transformed his memory into a powerful political tool. The first was what we can call emotional layer memorization. Instead of trying to remember isolated facts, he associated each important piece of information with a specific emotion he had felt at the moment. Technical details about fortifications were linked to curiosity. Information about betrayals was connected to indignation. Data about military resources was tied to fear or hope. The second technique was even more sophisticated. He created mental narratives where each important person became a character, with exaggerated physical and psychological characteristics. He transformed political meetings into dramatic stories, where each participant had a specific role in the plot. This way, he could remember not just what was said, but by whom, in what order, and with what hidden intentions. These techniques work because they use the natural way the brain processes and stores information. Memories associated with emotions are more lasting. Information organized in narratives is more accessible. Details connected to vivid mental images are more precise. Strong memory is power, but now comes the most crucial skill that will prepare you for life's most decisive moments: urgency. This brutal reality that Machiavelli repeatedly faced during his diplomatic career can teach you to make superior decisions when time is running out and pressure is at maximum. You have few minutes to decide something that will change your life. Your choice will affect your career, your relationships, your reputation. The clock is ticking. What do? Many people panic completely in this situation, paralyzed. Postpone the decision hoping for more information. Seek other people's opinions. Try to avoid choosing anything definitive. There's a lie that our society perpetuates about important decisions. You've been taught that quick decisions are frequently bad, that you need time, careful analysis, expert consultation, deep reflection. That intelligent people always think a lot before acting. This is a dangerous illusion that keeps you eternally indecisive. Machiavelli discovered the opposite during one of the most dangerous situations of his career. In 1503, he was negotiating in Rome when he learned that Pope Alexander VI had suddenly died. Within hours, the entire power structure of central Italy would be reorganized. Powerful people lost their papal protection. Enemies mobilized to destroy them. Florence could gain or lose crucial territories depending on how it reacted in the coming days. Machiavelli had limited time to decide whether Florence should support weakened factions, ally with their enemies, or maintain absolute neutrality. Any wrong choice could result in the Republic's destruction. There was no time to consult the Florentine government. He couldn't wait for more information. He needed to decide immediately with incomplete data and incalculable consequences. Many diplomats would have panicked or tried to postpone the decision. Machiavelli applied a mental method he had developed exactly for these moments of extreme pressure. First, he identified what was the worst possible scenario for each available option. Second, he calculated which decision offered more future alternatives, not necessarily the best immediate result. Third, he chose based on fundamental strategic principles, not emotions of the moment. He decided to maintain apparent neutrality, but secretly begin forming an anti-papal coalition. It was a decision that saved Florence from a devastating war and positioned the city as a respected mediator among great powers. All decided quickly under extreme pressure using clear principles. This four-step method that Machiavelli applied can be used in important decisions where time is limited. It works because it cuts through emotional paralysis and focuses only on controllable and measurable elements. Now you decide well under pressure, but you still need to integrate a mentality that separates strategic geniuses from normal people. Compassion. This word may seem contradictory when talking about mental coldness, but Machiavelli discovered something revolutionary during his final years. Coldness is not cruelty. Coldness is the highest form of compassion because it allows making decisions that truly help people. Society has programmed you to believe that intense emotions are signs of authenticity, that exploding with anger shows strong personality, that crying demonstrates sensitivity, that acting on impulse is being genuine, that cold people are automatically bad. This mentality is harming your ability to be truly useful to those you love. During his final years after writing The Prince and the Discourses, Machiavelli faced a profound dilemma. Did using these cold analysis methods make him a less human person? Was being strategic about relationships a form of manipulation? Did thinking 3 steps ahead make life artificial and calculating? The answer came when he observed the practical results of his 2 approaches. When he acted emotionally, even with the best intentions, the results were frequently disastrous. Advice given in the heat of the moment created more problems. Decisions based on feelings generated consequences that hurt those he wanted to protect. Impulsive reactions destroyed relationships that took years to build, but when he applied cold analysis, he could truly help the people around him. He read their real needs beyond the words they said, anticipated problems they didn't see coming, asked questions that led them to important discoveries about themselves, made difficult decisions they didn't have the courage to make alone. Coldness became an act of genuine love. The final transformation happens when you integrate all these methods into a way of life. Use analytical separation to distinguish facts from emotions in important situations. Observe people through the 5 universal signs before forming definitive opinions. Ask strategic questions that reveal truths without direct confrontation. Map second and third level consequences before acting. Train systematic mental connections daily. Apply 3-step decomposition to break complex problems. Use emotional memorization techniques to retain important information. Apply the 4-step method in decisions under extreme pressure. Your final code is simple: external coldness, internal compassion. Analyze without emotional involvement, but always with the goal of producing results that truly benefit everyone involved. Be strategic about methods but maintain genuinely human purposes. As Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, the effective ruler must be like the fox and the lion simultaneously. The fox to identify traps, the lion to face the wolves. You now possess the tools to be both when necessary. Of everything I discussed, which change will you implement first? Comment just 1 word below, just 1. Now you've seen how to develop the cold strategic intelligence that transforms ordinary people into lethal analysts. Click the video on screen to discover the most advanced techniques for gaining respect without saying a word.